This is a really important paper that came out, a couple of papers that are cited below in JCO and in Lancet, which show that breast cancer is really one size does not fit all. There are two main subtypes of breast cancer that we have highlighted here, the triple negatives and the hormone receptor positive HER2 negative patients, early stages. So as you can see from this table, the absolute risk of distant recurrence for triple negative patients up to 10 years can be 50 to 60%. And if you just follow this first line of triple negative breast cancer patients, the relative risk reduction with chemotherapy is 30% for both of them. However, for hormone receptor positive, the absolute risk of distant recurrence is only 10 to 15% compared to the TNBC patients, which is 50 to 60%. And if you look at the absolute percentage who benefit from chemotherapy, it is a lot higher in triple negatives, 15 to 20%, compared to the hormone receptor positive, which is 2 to 3%. And if you look at the fatal life-threatening performance of chemotherapy, the toxicity rates, etc., that rate itself is about 2 to 3%. So now if you compare the chemotherapy across these two subtypes of breast cancer, one can see that in hormone receptor positive, the patients who benefit are the rates of chemotherapy benefit and the fatalities due to chemotherapy is similar, whereas in triple negative, there is a lot higher benefit compared to the toxicities of chemotherapy. So this clearly shows that we need personalization and de-escalation of chemotherapy in the hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative early stage breast cancer. And we do use tumor size as one of the criteria to really judge patients' prognosis, tumor disease prognosis. But there are multiple papers which cite that small tumors can have aggressive biologies. And I mean, this has been shown in multiple papers that just because the tumor is small does not mean the patient may not benefit from chemotherapy. Patient can actually have a very aggressive disease even though the tumor size is small. So the clinical dilemma that we see in clinics that you all face today is which hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative early breast cancer patients have good prognosis and therefore can be treated with just chemotherapy, just hormone therapy alone. And so they are good prognosis. By that we mean they have a lower risk of cancer recurrence versus patients who have a high risk of cancer recurrence and therefore would need or benefit from chemotherapy. And prognostic tests, multiple prognostic tests and tools which have multi-gene or non-multi-gene have been used over the last 2 decades almost. And so what are these prognostic tools that we have today? So there are online calculators and equations that predict risk of recurrence. And the most commonly used among these are Predict NHS, UK, Adjuvant Online, Nottingham Prognostic Index, and IHC4. So these are first two are online calculators, and then the last two are equations that one can use on our own labs. And then there are also multi-gene prognostic tests such as MammaPrint and Oncotype. They are called first generation, and the second generation are EndoPredict and ProSigna. So these tests have been once again used by multiple by many countries over the last decade or so, or more than a decade. And there are a lot of publications, and usefulness of this test has been shown in the West very by means of many publications. And the importance of the prognostic multi-gene prognostic test has been realized. And AJCC has in fact even revised their guidelines to include multi-gene tests in prognosticating the disease in terms of staging the disease. So they have included prognostic stage grouping in addition to anatomic stage grouping in the AJCC guidelines. And prognostic staging they believe that prognostic staging customizes patients' prognosis in aiding effective treatment, and therefore they are saying that we can't no more. We should really, in addition to pure TNM based staging, we should do the prognostic stage and then include those include the information obtained from multi-gene test into staging the disease. However, one more this thing, TAILORx, which has been the prospective trial of Oncotype DX and MINDAT, which has been the prospective trial of MammaPrint, they've all shown that majority of the early stage breast cancer patients don't benefit from chemotherapy, and patients are also factoring in this important aspect in deciding their own treatments. We have had many celebrities coming out and talking about the side effects of chemotherapy. So this has all helped, this has all created a lot of awareness amongst patients as well. So the real question is, should multi-gene signatures be used in luminal early breast cancers, which are considered to be luminal A cancers are considered to be low risk for cancer recurrences, and therefore do we need a multi-gene signature in these patients? And the answer is, as shown in this paper, is yes. So clinical profiles are important, are helpful. We have been using them. However, clinical profiles could not reliably identify genomic risk groups across all the patients, and therefore, all, as I was mentioning, not all small tumors are not aggressive. So the clinical profiles are helpful, but they don't cannot always reliably identify the genomic risk groups, and hence multi-gene tests are indeed useful even in luminal early breast cancers to assess the disease the aggressiveness of the patient's tumor and to manage the disease. So ICMR has understood, has realized the potential of these tests. At the same time, these are not included in our the multi-gene signature tests. MammaPrint and Oncotype, etc., are not included in ICMR guidelines, primarily because their clinical utility has not been shown in Indian. Hello.
जल्दी एमडी होबो कैजुअलिटी नहीं आसीबो.
Oh, okay.
ना बीपी मोड़े पे से मेडिसिन नथे से कैजुअल टाइम से माने देखिए जे थियो इमरजेंसी अछि कने एबे तो हॉस्पिटल सब इलेक्टिव ओपीडी सब बंद कर दिया आइजे तपे आस्ते की इमरजेंसी टिके चेक करके नै जिवे कने एबे कोविड पेशेंट हमर अछन तो तपे टिके अवॉइड करिवे जते आन की देखि देखि नै जिवे संग.
So coming to Indian patients, so why has ICMR not included the multi-gene tests in our guidelines is primarily because Indian patients are younger at onset, as shown in this slide. They are younger at onset. The average age is about 48 years. They have a higher tumor burden, primarily come with one node positive disease, and they have primarily in India we have symptomatic detection. And primarily that comes to with one node positive, so it's stage 2 disease. As compared to the West, where the average age of the patient is a lot higher, 60 plus, they come up with screen detected smaller tumors, and hence the biology of those tumors can be less aggressive. Thus, the unmet need we felt is a test, prognostic test that is developed on Indian patients and well validated on our patients as well. So therefore, we developed CanAssist Breast. So just to give, for those who don't know, OncoStem Diagnostics is a startup company based in Bangalore. I incorporated the company in 2011, and 9 years later, we are a test that is developed, validated on not only Indian, but we have validation of CanAssist Breast in US and in Europe, and multiple additional European and US trials are ongoing, randomized control trials, samples from the European population we are trying to get, as well as retrospective studies. So what is CanAssist Breast? CanAssist Breast is a simple immunohistochemistry based test developed on Indian patients, and it's an alternative to Western test. So what we do in CanAssist Breast is we perform immunohistochemistry for 5 biomarkers, which are important in the biomarkers represent important signaling pathways that are involved in disease spread from primary site to site within the body. The immunohistochemistry is performed in an automated Ventana machine, and the slides are graded by qualified oncopathologists. The information that we get from these slides is then gets into our machine learning based statistical algorithm, which is developed entirely by Oncostem Diagnostics statisticians. And this information from the IHC slides, along with patient's tumor size, grade, and node information, which is fed to the machine learning based algorithm, gives us in the end a risk score. And that risk score is a numerical number between 0 and 100, and the cutoff at 15.5, which any patient with a cutoff of 15.5 or lower is called low risk for recurrence, and the patients with a risk score of 15.6 and above is stratified as high risk for cancer recurrence. And based on that, the clinicians can plan the treatment. So just to summarize this slide, Cannasis Breast is an IHC-based test. We perform IHC for 5 biomarkers, morphometric analysis, the clinical parameters, tumor size, grade, node, gets into the algorithm. We get a risk score, and patient is stratified as low or high risk for recurrence. This entire Cannasis Breast algorithm was developed using a 298 patient cohort from primarily from India, across all hospitals in India. And this is published in Biomarker Insights and Cancer Medicine. Now, what are the 5 biomarkers that we use in Cannasis Breast? So these biomarkers are invariably we get this question that is that ER, PR, HER2, and Ki67. So I would like to really clarify here in this seminar that we really don't look at ER, PR, HER2, or Ki67. We believe those 3-4 biomarkers are done routinely, and we don't need any additional tests to look at these 5 biomarkers: CD44, 2 cadherins, and 2 ABC transporter proteins, ABCC4 and ABCC11. And as you can see, these are the signaling how cancer progresses and where these 5 biomarkers are important. So cancer always begins in a duct, and there are these 2 key important processes that happen when the cancer begins, which begins in the duct, goes into and patient gets distant metastasis. So the epithelial to mesenchymal transition and mesenchymal to epithelial transition, and in between these 2 steps also there is the loss of cell addition. The cancer cells move from the original tumor into the blood vessels, into the blood, invade the blood vessels, go into the blood vessels, and come out of the blood vessels, again go through the MET, and that leads to the cells coming out and can form a tumors, and the tumors then become resistant to chemotherapy. And that's exactly how the disease spreads from a primary site to any organ in the body. These are the 5 biomarkers that are critical in these key processes involved in cell signaling. And on the right, we are showing the 5 biomarkers as pictures of immunohistochemistry. So, once the test is developed, what are the steps to really show its regulatory to showcase the quality of the test? So typically, EGAP is a body that regulates these processes. EGAP stands for Evaluation of Genomic Applications in Practice and Prevention. This is a body based in the US, and they typically regulate all the laboratory developed tests. And as per them, every test which is developed in the laboratory like ours needs to show analytical validity, clinical validity, and then clinical utility. So analytical validity depends on the platform of the test that is being used. In our case, we use immunohistochemistry. So analytical validation we have performed for Cannasis based on close to 100 samples, and it has been shown to be reproducible and repeatable. And these are the various parameters we have looked at: interoperator, intraoperator, intra-run, intra-observer, that is for pathologists, inter-lot of reagents, etc. So far, we have shown clinical validation of Cannasis based on close to 1,400 patients. Today, I'll be showing you data for this, and we have multiple studies closing close to over 1,000 patients underway in Europe and US as we speak. And through all this, I will show you the data that Cannasis Breast is prognostic and predictive. And clinical utility is the prospective use of Cannasis Breast. And today we have used Cannasis Breast on about 600 patients. We have commercially given reports to clinicians on 600 prospective patients of patients from India and near India countries. So moving on to analytical validation. I don't have the time today to go in depth of this, but this is the outline of analytical validation that we have shown for CAN-Assist BEST. Primarily, we are showing the repeatability of the test and reproducibility of the test by doing various experiments, multiple experiments, and what we have shown that the test is repeatable and reproducible. Moving on to clinical validation of CAN-Assist BEST. So this is really important data that we are, some of the data we are showing for the first time for many of you. So total validation we have for all the patients, 1400 patients, is shown on the Kaplan-Meier survival curve on the left. The graph shows that CAN-Assist BEST is able to segregate all of these patients into 2 risk groups: low risk for cancer recurrence, and the red line shows high risk for cancer recurrence. And the distant metastasis-free survival is shown. The low risk patients have 95% and the high risk patients have 84% survival. And this is over 5 years. So CAN-Assist BEST is able to predict the risk of cancer recurrence over 5 years, and this is shown in the Kaplan-Meier graph on the left. So we often get asked this question, that can we predict, because as you all know, there is a hormone receptor positive patients do tend to have another peak of recurrence at around year 7. So can our test CAN-Assist BEST predict that recurrence? And hence we analyze the data for 7-year risk of recurrence prediction. So I must tell you here that we don't have data for every patient out of this 1400 for 7 years, and hence we looked at only patients for whom we have definitely 18 months follow-up data. And as can be seen in the Kaplan-Meier survival graph on the right side, the low risk for recurrence patients and the high risk for recurrence patients can be distinctly separated using CAN-Assist BEST with a very highly significant p-value. This shows that CAN-Assist BEST is able to prognose the patients for risk of recurrence for up to 7 years from diagnosis in a very statistically significant manner. Now, is CAN-Assist BEST? This is another important question that we often get. Is because this is the previous slide shows a cohort that was mixed cohort treated with and without chemotherapy. So we did many subgroup analysis for this entire cohort, and this slide shows the endocrine therapy only cohort and clinically low risk patients. So the graph on the Kaplan-Meier survival graph on the left-hand side shows endocrine therapy only cohort. None of these patients were treated with chemotherapy in retrospect. And as you can see, there are totally 423 patients, and CAN-Assist BEST was able to find a group of patients who were at high risk for cancer recurrence. So there were definitely majority of the patients were at low risk for cancer recurrence, and they have an excellent DMFS. But even in these endocrine therapy only treated patients, there was a group of patients who were high risk for cancer recurrence, and CAN-Assist BEST segregated these patients, and many of these patients did have recurrences. On the right, I am showing you a Kaplan-Meier survival graph, which is for clinically low risk. So these were all typically T1, T2, N0 patients, which are typically considered low risk for cancer recurrence. And as you can see here, even in these patients, CAN-Assist BEST was able to find patients who are at high risk for cancer recurrence. So this goes to show that not every patient with a clinical parameters which are indicative of low risk of cancer recurrence or good biology, good prognosis, that there is more to it than clinical parameters. There is more to it. That meets the eye. The biology of the tumor is really important, and CAN-Assist BEST is able to find, even in these clinically low risk patients who are at high risk for cancer recurrence, and they have indeed recurred. So it is able to find patients who actually will benefit from chemotherapy as well, even in the clinically low risk group. So it is not, the only aim is not to avoid chemotherapy, but to give the chemotherapy in an optimal manner, so you don't miss out on patients who really would benefit from chemotherapy and they are at higher risk for recurrence, even when they have very highly beneficial clinical parameter behavior. So is Canasys, this is another question we often get in any time we present this data, that our patients tend to be younger. So is Canasys best useful in younger patients? Have you used Canasys? Have you validated Canasys best in younger patients? So we did a subgroup analysis, and as you can see in this slide, the slide number 30, patients who are under 50 and over 50, we did two separate analyses. And the Kaplan-Meier survival graph on the left shows that patients who are under 50 as well as over 50, Canasys Best is able to segregate patients into low and high risk for cancer recurrence in a statistically significant manner, irrespective of age. So but this really goes to show that the biology, it really relies on the biology of the disease and can segregate patients irrespective of age. Now, is Canasys Best useful in node negative and node positive patients? So the first graph, Kaplan-Meier survival graph on the leftmost side shows node negative cohort. This is total number of patients is 824 here. Canasys Best is, and majority of these are actually chemotherapy treated. It's a mixed cohort of chemotherapy treated and naive. And the second graph, which is node negative cohort chemotherapy naive, all of these patients did not receive chemotherapy, endocrine therapy treated only. So in both these graphs, you can see that Canasys Best is indeed able to segregate, and the last group is, I'm not able to see. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so in all these three graphs, essentially, Canasys Best shows that it can segregate patients from patients into two subgroups: low risk for recurrence and high risk for cancer recurrence in a statistically significant manner, whether they are node negative or node positive. Now, coming to Canasys Best, does it demonstrate the chemotherapy benefit? This is a very important slide, and Oncotype DX has shown this data very clearly, but none of the other multi-gene tests has shown the benefit of chemotherapy in high-risk groups. So the Kaplan-Meier graph on the left shows Canasys left shows all the patients which were stratified by Canasys Best as low risk for cancer recurrence. The patients shown in blue are given chemotherapy plus endocrine therapy, and the patients who were treated with just endocrine therapy are represented in the red line. As you can see here, when Canasys Best stratifies the patient as low risk for cancer recurrence, both these graphs are overlapping, indicating the patients, when the patient is stratified as low risk for cancer recurrence, whether or not you give chemotherapy in addition to endocrine therapy is not beneficial. Patients do very well with just endocrine therapy. However, when Canasys Best calls the patient, stratifies the patients as high risk for cancer recurrence, the line that is the red line, which is the patients treated with endocrine therapy only, have many more recurrences compared to patients who got chemotherapy plus endocrine therapy, indicating there is definitely a benefit of chemotherapy in the patients stratified as high risk for cancer recurrence when Canasys Best stratifies them as high risk for cancer recurrence. And this difference in the two, the low and high risk, is what we call chemotherapy benefit. Now, the next slide, slide 35, shows Canasys Best is an independent predictor of prognosis by doing multivariate analysis. So we did a multivariate analysis across all these parameters: age, ARPR, chemotherapy treatment, node status, tumor size, grade, and Canasys Best risk score. As you can see, the hazard ratio for majority of them was around 1 to 1.5, whereas Canasys Best risk score stood out with a hazard ratio of 3.2 with a very significant value, indicating it is an independent predictor of cancer recurrence, and it's a very significant predictor of cancer recurrence compared to all the parameters that were tested in the multivariate analysis. And so the next slide shows, all of these analysis has been a mixed cohort of Indian and Caucasian patients. So we were curious, how does Canasys Best perform in the US and European patients, that is Caucasian patient cohorts. So we, in this slide, we looked at this data separately. So risk certification by Canasys Best in Caucasian cohort, as you can see, the Kaplan-Meier survival graph on the left shows the total cohort of only Caucasian patients treated with and without chemotherapy, mixed cohort. And Canis's best is able to segregate the patients into low risk and high risk in a statistically significant manner. Then the Kaplan-Meier graph on the right hand shows all the patients, all the Caucasian patients who were treated with only endocrine therapy. And even here, Canis's best is able to segregate the patients into low and high risk very well. And we have 4 more studies that are ongoing in the US and in Europe, and all that data, and this data will even bigger by the end of this year. So so the gist of this slide is to showcase that Canis's best works in Indian as well as in Caucasian populations equally well, with a very comparable and high negative predictive value of 96%. How does Canis's best perform in clinically low risk groups? I think I've shown you this data previously, but just to showcase you once again, Canis's best is indeed able to show, as you can see in this Kaplan-Meier survival group, it's a very busy slide. Yeah, that Canis's best is able to segregate the patients who are at low and high risk for cancer recurrence, even in a very clinically low risk T1N0 patients. So we are also in the process to do a head-to-head comparison with multi-gene tests. And so far we have compared Canis's best with Oncotype DX. As you can see here, this is data on close to 100 plus patients. The bar graph on the left shows comparison of this of all those patients, segregation of the patients by Oncotype and Canis's best. So Oncotype stratified about 62% patients as low risk, and Canis's stratified about 84% as low risk for cancer recurrence. And Oncotype, remember, this is the old way of analyzing Oncotype, where they used to do low, intermediate, and high risk. Since this is in retrospect, and intermediate plus high risk by Oncotype was about close to 38%, 38 to 40%, and Canis's best high risk percentage was about close to 20%. So the question that we were very curious to understand was, what is the concordance between the two tests? So we looked at the low risk percentage, the patients who were called as low risk for cancer recurrence by Oncotype DX and Canis's best, and tried to understand how many of those patients are common. So as you can see, we have 82% concordance between Oncotype DX and Canis's best on the low risk category. They were all treated based on Oncotype DX segregate way of stratifying. So all the low risk patients did not get chemotherapy, and they 82%, we Oncotype and Canis's best had 82% concordance on those patients who did not take chemotherapy and and had no recurrence. And another important question that TAILORx also answered was, because the Oncotype in the older version of the risk score categorization, there used to be an intermediate risk group, which is quite about 30 to 33%, and those patients, clinicians used to be in a dilemma how to treat them. So TAILORx showed that when they did the randomization of that RS group 11 to 25, and showed that majority of those patients did not benefit from chemotherapy. So we also looked at the Oncotype intermediate plus high risk group primarily, and assess how does Canis's best stratify those patients, and we found that about 85% of those patients were stratified as low risk for cancer recurrence, and which is in line with what TAILORx showed, that majority of those randomized patients with in the RS 11 to 25 randomized to chemo, no chemo, do not benefit from chemotherapy. We are also doing a head-to-head study with MammaPrint. This is also a study ongoing, which is, so far we have accrued about 50 patients, and we've seen that Canis's best, the concordance with Canis's best and MammaPrint is about 85%. Canis's best certified 67% as low risk, and MammaPrint certified about 58% as low risk, and we have 85% concordance between the two tests on the low risk category again. And I think we have seen majority. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we have time, so I can quickly run you through the comparison between Canis's best with Ki67 and Illumina subgrouping. So Ki-67 is often used as a quick tool to assess the risk of how aggressive is the, how proliferative is the disease, or should we treat the patient with chemotherapy or not. So we wanted to understand how does Canas's Best compare with Ki-67 based stratification. So as you can see, there are two cutoffs that we have used here because we spoke to many clinicians and some of them use 14%, some of them use 20%. So irrespective of the cutoff use, what we noticed is Ki-67 was not able to segregate the patient cohort into low and high risk in a statistically significant manner, irrespective of whether it is 14% cutoff or 20%, whereas Canas's Best is able to segregate the same set of patients into low and high risk in a statistically significant manner. Canas's Best was also able to segregate the Ki-67 risk groups, the low risk group and the high risk group, further into low and high risk based on Canas's Best. For example, here we have shown that Canas's Best based risk re-stratification of the high Ki-67 group. So all the patients which were stratified as high risk for recurrence based on Ki-67 percentage, Canas's was able to find a subgroup of patients who were at low risk for cancer recurrence, even in this, and they have actually done well. They have a very good DMFS of 96%. And on the contrary, all the patients which were stratified as low risk for the cancer recurrence based on Ki-67 cutoff, Canas's was able to find a group of patients who were actually at high risk for cancer recurrence, and in a, again very statistically significant manner, and there were many recurrences in that group of patients, indicating Ki-67 based proliferation based subgrouping of patients into low and high risk is not always very accurate. Luminal AB, once again we found that there were many patients in Luminal A category which were actually at high risk for cancer recurrence based on Canas's Best segregation. And in Luminal B, we found patients who were at low risk for cancer recurrence as well. IHC4 is again a UK-based equation-based method to segregate patients into low, intermediate, and high risk for risk stratification, and that uses different way of grading ER/PR HER2. And as you can see here, IHC we compared IHC4 based risk stratification of with Canas's based risk stratification. IHC4 based risk stratification was not very efficient in segregating the patients into low, intermediate, and high risk for recurrences with non-significant p-value. The same group of patients, Canas's Best was able to segregate into low and high risk for cancer recurrence in a very significant manner. There was a large intermediate group of patients which was stratified as intermediate based on IHC4 based risk stratification, and we tried to assess if Canas's Best can help in understanding the actual risk stratification of these patients. So we ran Canas's Best based risk stratification on the only IHC4 intermediate risk group, and the Kaplan-Meier graph on the rightmost shows that yes, Canas's Best is indeed able to segregate those patients into low risk and high risk for recurrence again. So to summarize, Canas's Best is a robust IHC-based prognostic test. It stratifies patients into two actionable risk groups with no intermediate risk zone. Canas's Best risk stratification is independent of cohort-specific differences. That is, it is able to segregate patients into two risk categories irrespective of the age of the patients, irrespective of the node status of the patients. Chemotherapy benefit was observed only in high-risk patients, and Canas's Best stratified higher number of patients into low-risk category compared to Oncotype and MammaPrint. We have very good concordance. Canas's Best has more than 83% concordance between both Oncotype DX and MammaPrint based risk categories. And so considering the price point of Oncotype and MammaPrint, Canas's Best is extremely affordable. Canas's Best definitely helps in preventing undertreatment in majority of low Ki-67 Luminal A or patients who are at or in preventing the high risk patients based on Ki-67 or Luminal B patients, and it accurately identifies the low risk or high risk for recurrence patients out of the IHC4 intermediate risk category. So how is Canesis Best impacting treatment? So as you all know, we are in the market for last 2.5 years, and we've sold close to 600 tests in these years over 30 cities, and close to 200 clinicians have been extremely supportive of us. So this is how the spread of Canesis Best across India is. In these many cities, we have got samples from. Majority of the patients are node negative that so far we have performed Canesis Breast on, and typically about 70% patients do come out as low risk for cancer recurrence. We have recently published in IJSO the early data on the risk stratification, how is Canesis Breast is impacting in risk stratification of patients and giving the optimal therapy. And as you can see, Canesis Best has helped 93% of these patients in avoiding chemotherapy. And when the patients are stratified as low risk for cancer recurrence, most of the time, 93% of the time, there is adherence to that decision, and patients are spared of chemotherapy. So to summarize once again, why Canesis Breast? Because it is a made in India test. It is developed in India for our patients. It is the only prognostic test that is really developed and validated on Indian patient samples. It's fast turnaround time, and it's affordable. We have all the right regulatory approvals, CE mark, ISO 13485. We run all the samples, whether they come from US, Europe, or in India, or near India countries. We run them in our central lab, which is NABL accredited and CAP accredited, based in Bangalore. The lab is in Bangalore. The Canesis Best is patent protected. We have patent granted in US, Europe, China, South Korea, Hong Kong, in multiple countries. And we have published about Canesis Best in multiple papers, as well as presented posters or oral presentations in multiple conferences that are held in all over in Europe and in Asia in the last 2 to 3 years. So thank you all for listening. And are there any questions before we get into the case studies? Hello. I just wanted to showcase 2 case studies, and just give me a minute. Can everyone hear me again?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So are there any questions before I proceed with the case studies? If there are no questions, I can talk about the case studies and we can take questions in the end as well.
One question, Dr. Marji.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Usually we are not doing the genomic testing or prognostic testing for all the breast cancer patients. We are selective in doing because of the cost involvement or because we know the ERPR here too, and we are not using the luminal classification. Right. So do you advise the CAB testing for any specific group of patients where, for example, premenopausal patients who are nulliparous like that, or elderly patients who are fragile, not willing for chemotherapy like that, or you got all the breast cancers can go for CAB testing?
Yes, so we validated CAN-Assist breast on across the age group, under 50 and over 50. So can patients into low and high risk irrespective of the age of the patient.
So you advise for every patient irrespective of the criteria and everything, so that we get best out of it.
Yeah, I mean, a case that you think is a challenging case, or if the patient doesn't want, or yeah, I mean, because as you can see, from the data that we have shown that just based on the tumor is small and the nodes are not positive, nodes are not with metastasis, I mean, the clinical parameters are insufficient in today's day and age. There's a lot that relies in the biology. There is really biology before anatomy that is important, and hence, yes, we would recommend prognostic staging. We would recommend prognostication on patients whom either you have a doubt or the patient has a doubt, or I mean, it's really up to you. But what we are showcase the data is if we can perform it across node, across age groups.
Okay, can I have one more question?
Sure.
Okay. What is the role of CAB in TNBC patients and metaplastic breast cancer patients? These two are coming up very high in numbers of late in the practice.
Right. So good question. So we for triple negative breast cancer patients, we have a separate test that we have been working on. CAN-Assist breast is only meant for hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative patients.
Okay.
And metaplastic, yes, we have included some metaplastic patients in our validation. I remember very distinctly. So so long as they're hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative, we can run CAN-Assist breast on them.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me start with the case study now. So the first case study is a patient who is that this is actually one of the prospective cases that we have used. One of our doctor has given us this case. So the patient was 59 years old and she had T2N0 disease, which was grade 2. However, she had so patient was considered clinically high risk primarily because she has some family history of maternal aunt, and previously she had cancer of endometrium. So the clinician was in a dilemma what to do because she's T2N0, so that and grade 2 disease, 59 years old. So how should she postmenopausal? So how should he treat her? And because of the family history, he had a little dilemma. So he sent the case to us for CAN-Assist breast testing, and she fell under the low risk for recurrence category. Her risk score was 12.2, and the doctor has withheld chemotherapy for her. He treated her with just endocrine therapy, and it's been about 1.5 or close to 2 years now, and she is doing fine. So this goes to show that when you have such a case that she's elderly, she has T2N0 disease, but she has a family history and she had a endometrial cancer. CAN-Assist breast can help you to understand how to stratify this particular patient. And any questions on this case before I move on to the second case? All right. If there are no more,
I have a question.
Is it possible that because of the radiation and chemotherapy, also the TNM staging get changed?
So the TNM staging is done before you give any kind of NSCT, right? Are you talking about the adjuvant radiation or adjuvant chemotherapy?
Yeah, I'm talking about an adjuvant chemotherapy because one of my customer had a case where the patient's initial stage was the different, and post neoadjuvant chemotherapy, the stage got changed.
It was downstage.
Yeah, it was the tumor grades, tumor size got reduced, but the nodal status got actually changed.
Nodal status got? Hello?
Initially it was N0 actually, and
Okay.
after that neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and it got changed to N1.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, because typically after the NSCT, the tumor size will shrink. I mean, not will shrink, but may shrink depending on the how much response we get, pathological complete response or partial response. So the typical size does reduce, but we haven't heard of anyone telling that the nodal status went from N0 to N1. That's interesting. Yeah, but typically we haven't heard such issues. Okay.
Because when we were discussing this case, in fact, doctor was actually wanted to know that is it due to the radiation this thing has got changed or what? So he was actually inquiring to us. So I was not having any answer for this. I thought of let me ask you.
I don't think any of these treatments would affect this. Really. Maybe it was missed in.
So in this type of case, can we do the kinesis breast of that patient's block because that block doesn't have to.
Yes, yes. If the patient's so long as what I mean, we do not recommend performing kinesis breast on the tumor that is removed from the patient after the neoadjuvant chemotherapy or neoadjuvant any hormone therapy, etc. Or because the tumor parameters change and the tumor biology changes. So if the patient has taken in neoadjuvant chemotherapy, we recommend that the doctors would send us the tumor sample taken before the neoadjuvant therapy was administered to the patient. Does that help?
Yeah, surely. I have to actually check with the customer that can we get the core biopsy from where the initial that ISC is being done.
Yes.
If we can do kinesis based on that, maybe we can actually solve the problem.
Okay, sure. Okay. And the second case that we are going to discuss today is a very interesting case of a young lady. She was 31 at the time when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was recently married. She had once again a T2N0 disease, a grade 2 disease, but her of course she's young at age and her Ki67 levels were high, 40%. So at the, she also had this. I mean, she was 31 at that time. This was about almost 4 years ago, and so she wanted to have a family. So the clinician was really in a dilemma because she's young, she has high Ki67, but if he gives her the chemotherapy, then we are looking at a long time before she can. After chemotherapy, she will take the 5 years endocrine therapy and then get into the family way. So by then she may be 37 or so. So therefore, clinician wanted to understand her risk of cancer recurrence potential. Therefore, he ordered kinesis breast. We performed kinesis breast on this patient's tumor sample, and she was actually low risk for cancer recurrence. So a clinician stuck by the decision that we gave, the result that we gave, and he actually withheld chemotherapy and allowed her to conceive first. and she actually conceived and she delivered a very healthy baby. And it's been 4 years. After that, of course, he put her on endocrine therapy, and it's been 4 years, and she is doing fine. So this really is one case we are really very happy to follow up and really eager to follow up to see how she is doing every year that we do annual follow-ups for all the patients. And it's really very heartening to see that she is doing well.